how do we make sense of our world? The way we organize knowledge, it's not just some dusty academic thing. It literally defines how we see everything around us. Today, we're going to dive into this by looking at a really fascinating piece of old tech. You might even call it the Internet of 1880.
So take a look at this. It's a biblical cyclopedia from the 1880s. And in a world with no Wi-Fi, no Google, nothing, this one single heavy book was pretty much the closest thing you could get to an all-knowing search engine.
And believe me, this wasn't just for looking up Bible verses. Oh no, it was a whole information ecosystem. It shaped how people understood reality, their jobs, their place in the world, and for its time that was absolutely revolutionary.
Let's really get into how this book worked as a kind of, an operating system for the mind. It created this single, authoritative lens that people used to view their entire world.
You can see how ambitious it was just by how it describes itself. It wasn't just about theology. It's got natural history, geography, antiquities. It really was trying to be a complete guide to everything you could possibly know, all packed into one tidy framework. So, what was actually in this thing? Okay, this is where it gets really fun. The scope of this book goes way beyond what you'd probably expect. It was a seriously practical guide to the known world. For example, check out its entry for unicorn. Now, the book doesn't treat it like some magical horse, not at all. Instead, it kind of shrugs and says, translation is tricky. It probably just means a real animal like a rhino or a buffalo. It's trying to make sense of the mysterious to fit it into its own scientific view of the world. And then there's this, which shows just how practical it was. This cyclopedia was also a kind of product directory. An emerald isn't just a green rock. No, it's defined by its beauty, its value, and where it comes from. India. This is knowledge tied directly to global trade. It even defined professions. Here's an entry for fuller, which describes the job of cleaning cloth. I mean, this just shows how the book gave people a shared language, not just for their faith, but for business, for their jobs, for the real material world they lived in.
But here's the thing. This way of knowing, all text-based, categorized, alphabetical, it wasn't the only one out there. In Tasmania, where you would have found this book in settlers' homes, there was another, much, much older system of knowledge. One that was lived, not written down.
And the contrast is just, wow, it's so stark. On one side, you have knowledge crammed into dense columns of text. And on the other, you have knowledge that's literally embedded in the land itself, in the seasons, the tides, the life cycles of everything. They're two completely different worlds.
The knowledge of the local Mumirimana people was completely alive, completely dynamic. It was this complex calendar of movement and taking care of the land, traveling to the coast for shellfish, then heading inland for swan eggs. It was a system perfectly tuned to that specific place, passed down for generations. This was deep ecological wisdom.
So what happens when the world of the book, a world that sees nature as a resource to be cataloged and used, crashes into the world of the land, which sees nature as a community to be lived with?
Well, the flooding of Lake Pedder is a pretty tragic real-world example. A decision was made based on a worldview that saw hydroelectric power as more important than a one-of-a-kind ecosystem. And even though the world's first Greens Party was formed to stop it, even though the federal government offered a blank check to save it, the lake was destroyed anyway. The way of knowing that only saw kilowatts, it won.
And then, of course, there's the Silacine, the Tasmanian tiger. Its extinction is another one of those powerful symbols of this clash. A permanent loss that happened because of a failure to understand and value a unique part of the natural world. But what if that loss isn't actually permanent? In a fascinating twist, our modern knowledge system is now trying to undo the damage of the past. And that brings up a whole new set of questions. The whole effort to clone the thylacine, it just shows you how much has changed. We've gone from a single book to finding reality, to using complex genetic code to try and bring reality back. Now, the project has had its stops and starts, for sure, but it really shows that our relationship with knowledge is always, always evolving. So this brings us right to today. We don't have one big book that explains everything anymore. Our modern cyclopedia is scattered, it's fragmented, it's super specialized, and it lives in a million different databases and reports. I mean, here's a perfect example. A public health report from a local council. It's got incredible detail, full of numbers on complaints and wastewater apps, and it's vital information for sure, but it's totally sterile, totally siloed off from everything else. Or how about this? instructions for how to mount a plant specimen. Again, it's so specific, it's expert knowledge, but there's no big picture, no grand story here, just a very, very precise procedure for one very particular task. And finally, we've got projections about the future, robot exoskeletons that need charging stations. It just shows that our knowledge today feels like a blizzard of data points, technical manuals, and guesses about the future. Honestly, it can be pretty overwhelming. So when you really think about it, we've traded that single, coherent worldview of the 1880s cyclopedia for this infinite universe of fragmented data. We can sequence a genome, we can track public health complaints by the hour, we have more information than we've ever had before. But does all of this information actually lead to more wisdom? Now that is the question.